Working with children is very difficult. Yes, I know what you're thinking, in the real world as well. But you know what? It's the same with the DOM. Children can be difficult. They can be stubborn and they think they know it all. So anyway, that's what we're going to have to deal with here. And I want us to spend a bit of time on children. So you'll even see in the next lecture, we're going to go into more detail. Here, I just want to kind of, I thought let's just skip away from the slides we were just looking at and let's look here at some practical examples of working with children. So let me just get rid of myself so you can see better. Adios. And let's look at this body of ours. I want us to actually look at the body element itself. So let's go back to our text editor here. I want to look at this body element and I want to look at its children property. How many children do you think it should have? That might have been a bit of a trick question. It's only got one direct child property, the main element. Okay, so let's go to our text editor. And what's really cool as well before I start coding here is that the body is directly accessible on the document object itself. So we can just say let body children be assigned to the document body element. And within that, remember what we want to access? We want to access this children method. And remember what it returned? That's right, it returns a collection of all its children. So if we hit return and we console log this out, we get an HTML collection. We already know what an HTML collection is. So how cool is this? All right, this is why we need to learn the basics because everything builds on each other. And we can see this collection is made up of 2 items. Don't worry about the script. This script is my live server. Okay, it's automatically injected by the live server in order for this to run directly from my Visual Studio Code. For all practical purposes, we've only got one item in this collection, and that is this main element. Remember what I said about the HTML collection being kind of like an array? Well, because it's kind of like an array, we can access the for method and we can actually loop through all the elements in the array. So say we wanted to actually have a red border around the body element. How would we do that? Well, we can just use a simple for loop. So for let I equals 0, I less than, remember how we said that the body children has a length property? So we can access it directly, and of course each iteration we want to increase I. This is very simple, you'll know how to do this. This is just a simple for loop. What do we want to do on each iteration? Well, we want to access its child. So let's just say the child is assigned to the value of body children, and depending on where we are in the loop, it will return that specific child. And all we're then wanting to do is we're wanting to change its style border to, I don't know, let's just say 5 pixels solid red. There we go. Let's do that. Does that make sense? So let's hit return and boom shakalaka. We've just done it. We've done an awesome job here. So there we go. There we've accessed the body children. We've looped through it. I know there wasn't much point of looping through because we actually only had one item, the main. I just kind of I want you to get an intuitive feel for how we can use loops and children and HTML collections. Is it making sense? But I'm not quite done. There's one more thing I want to show you now. This was kind of the simple example, the intuitive one. There's something else that might be a bit less intuitive, might be a bit of a trick question. What I want to do is I want us to access our h1 tag. Do you think that there are any children of the h1 tag? Let's go back to our text editor. Look at that h1 tag. It says welcome. Are there any children of that h1 tag? Well, intuitively, you and I would think not. Remember, we had the diagram, there's no children, and you'd expect there to be null for children. Well, let's have a look at our console whether that's the case. Spoiler alert, it's not. But anyway, let's start by accessing this h1 tag. How do we do this? Again, we can use any of our DOM access methods. So we start by accessing the root of our web page, being the document. On that, we can access a plethora of different access methods. I'm just going to use get elements by tag name again, because we know we've only got one h1 tag in our document. So there we go. We've got our h1. I can even log it out for you. You can see it's an HTML collection, and there's our h1. Great. So we've got the h1. Let's now access its children property. How would we do that? Well, I want to actually access the h1 element in and of itself, not this collection. So we're accessing the collection now. I want the first item in this collection, and then let's access its children property. What would you expect to see? Well, here we've got an HTML collection with nothing in it. And that's intuitive. That's what we would expect, right? We said that it doesn't have children. So cool, all is good and well, but what about if we use firstChild and lastChild? What would happen there? You might be thinking, I would also expect it to contain nothing. So let's see. So we're accessing H1, the first item in this collection, and now I want us to access firstChild. If we return that, we get this welcome text node. What? Blows your mind, eh? So this H1 tag actually does have a child, and the child is the text itself. It's this welcome text. And because it only has one child, this text child, you would expect it to be the same if we wrote lastChild, wouldn't you? Yes, and it is the same. And I guess this is the bit that's a bit less intuitive, is that, the firstChild and lastChild returns any type of child node, including text nodes. But when we access the children property, it only returns us element nodes, which is why that returned an empty collection, versus firstChild and lastChild, which actually returned us the text. Don't worry too much about the differences between firstChild and children. We're going to be getting into it in this course. For now, just start understanding it. Something else that's interesting is if you only did want the elements, there's another property. So let's access our H1, our first element in that collection. And instead of typing firstChild, we can type first element child, which returns intuitively the first element child of this particular element. And because we know it doesn't have any element children, it's going to return null, which is what we expected and what we saw on the slides previously. Whew, we've done a lot, and thank you for bearing with me. And I hope you're starting to understand this stuff, that it's not that difficult. And the more you work with it, the more intuitive it is. I don't want this to intimidate you. It shouldn't. You're a master at this now. Hope you're having fun. And because children are so important, I want us to just discuss children in a bit more detail next. Some really, really cool and interesting things. See you now.